Hello, A pushers. This is the video with your lecture notes. We will begin to talk about chapter 11, which is the religion and reform. We've been discussing it all week, so here are your lecture notes. We'll begin with our first section, which is individualism, the ethic of the middle class. So, to begin with, we have to talk about transcendentalism and the impact it had on individualism. So if you remember what we discussed on Monday, is that transcendentalism is basically an intellectual movement. It's really based on a religion, Unitarianism, and it's a movement that really takes off in Europe. It's romanticized because of its connection to nature, and one of the things that does not blend with is the alignment thinking. The transcendentalists were not big on alignment thinking, mainly because the alignment think was really on trying to find the answer to everything, always asking the reason for. But Transcendentalists were more on a celebration of human passion, so what people like to do, whether it was go out to nature, interactions, and they like to have those mysteries in life. They didn't want everything to be answered. So, what is the basis of Unitarianism? Is very simple. The belief that you have that it's still based Christian based religion, but to them there is no Holy Trinity as most religions have. So for Unitarianists, all they believe is that there's a God. They do not believe in the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. There's just God, and so that's something that kind of drifts away from the typical or common um, sects of Christianity. So one of the things you're going to see with Emerson is that he feels that we are bounded, we're restrained by our traditions, by the stuff we keep doing because somebody else told us to do, and so he's very anti-systems. He believes that. Religions are restrictions, so eventually he's part of Unitarianism, but eventually leaves the religion because he just feels like he's too controlled and he just wants to be out in nature and be able to pray and worship whatever he wants, whether it's that is nature, let it be. And so he feels that all these restraints are caused by our traditions, the stuff that's passed down from our families. So he eventually, again, feels that nature is the place to be, and eventually goes on a self journey uh, of through nature, and he eventually feels that in in time where you're stressed, in a time where you need help, nature is that place, and so he feels that the industrialist um, movement, the industrialization, the mechanization of lives is really killing, is really destroying the spiritual lives of humans because they're just so bound to the machines. They're so bound to just doing work 6 to 7 days a week, 16 to 18 hours a day. So he feels that this new system, while it's great for our economy, is eventually hurting Americans spiritually. So this is just an image and a visual representing Unitarianism. Um, Remember that for them, they don't believe that there is the Son, the Father, the Holy Spirit. They feel like it's just one God. There is no Holy Trinity as displayed in in this in this painting. And here's a picture of Emerson, um, Ralph Waldo Emerson. And again, he's a huge uh, huge character in the whole transcendentalism movement because he eventually, along with his fellow writers, he starts up this movement to focus on transcending from where you're at to become something better. And again, his notion of being out in nature is key, right, to transcendentalists, just connecting with nature, getting away from this whole idea of industrialization, cities, factories, and all of that, that was damaging to the soul. Another movement that eventually takes place within transcendentalism is the Lyceum movement. You can call it like your traveling school system. At this time in the United States, there was no public schools, so this was a type of education that the public could get. It's more for adults, more like adult education. Think about if you can remember back to Napoleon and his lycée system of education, right? He establishes a system of education in France after taking control of France. So it kind of pays homage to that. Remember that this is already in uh, a good part of the 1800s, and he does establish his lycées in early part of the 1800s. So the system basically is traveling educators, lecturers, performers go from town to town, state to state, and they eventually just publicly give out knowledge. And most of the people there listening to these um, lectures are going to be adults. So basically, you get educated, right, by hearing these people talk. And so this type of movement was done out in public. It's sort of like your traditional, it kind of was modeled after the traditional Aristotle public speeches that he would do in ancient Greece, where he would literally talk about philosophy and other topics. And so it's the same concept. People eventually are learning through these lectures. And so something you need to know is that this type of lectures were more popular in the North and Midwest, obviously, right? Because education is more of a priority in these regions of America than in the South. The South really don't want their population to be too educated. So Emerson is one of those speakers that travels the nation, giving speeches, and again, he's revered as an intellectual because of his writing, and so he's eventually going to be a huge impact in these Lyceum movements. So just remember, Lyceum movement is a movement within Transcendentalism. It's a traveling educational system where people are educated through lectures, public lectures. As you can see in this painting, it's just basically um, it's geared out of the Aristotle's Aristotle in ancient Greece and in his public speeches that he would give to the public. As the movement eventually gains popularity, you're going to see that it influences different individuals. So some individuals that were influenced by transcendentalism in a positive way are authors Henry David Thoreau, who eventually writes Walden, as I explained in class. He talks about um, his basically connection to this pond where he lives for 2 years all by himself. Whenever he needed food, he went into town, brought it back, and that's where he lived for 2 years. And again, if you remember from your book, from the reading, he eventually, this is all caused by the death of his brother, who eventually feels depressed, and he feels that out in nature is what is going to cure him. Then you have Margaret Fuller, who we read a section on. And again, she's very into the equality of men and women, that both of them are capable of having a relationship with God, that that one does not have a better relationship with God than the other, and she was huge on the abolitionist movement. She spoke on it. She spoke about women's rights, but basically, if you remember from the class, is that she feels that there's no set guidelines, there's no set roles in society or in the home, that men are gonna could do more things, and women can also participate in politics. They do have a brain and can contribute. Um, Other individuals, noted individuals, Walt Whitman, who eventually publishes um, uh, poetry in the Leaves of Grass, who eventually feels that he's fed up with society. So he basically talks about nature and how that can eventually help you in your struggles. Some that were impacted negatively is our Hawthorne, who feels that he has a very pessimistic worldview of especially when it comes to transcendentalism, and he eventually writes his belief is that to this egoistic mentality of the transcendentalist is going to hurt our society, and he feels that too much individualism is hurtful for the human. That at times you have to be part of a group, and so in his writing of Scarlet Letter, he depicts how being selfish could eventually lead to hurting the community. And then a second critic of transcendentalism is Herman Melville, who eventually writes Moby Dick. And in his story, basically, the pursuit of something great by an individual leads to his death. So that's what he's saying. But most of society did not really buy into these two individuals. They were happy. They enjoyed the teachings of Ralph Waldo Emerson, and his the main focus of being in nature, being taking care of yourself. That was huge for Americans at the time. So they chose to pursue the ideas of Emerson rather than the naysayers that eventually arose.